Council President Kelly Menke will lead us in that. Kelly?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Kelly. Before we have an invitation to citizens for public comment, I would just like to turn a few minutes over to our city manager, Jeff Towery, to introduce a new employee that has joined us this week. So, Jeff?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council, members of the audience. As most of you know, Jay Pearson has retired from the City of McMinnville after a long and fruitful career as our Parks and Recreation Director, spending nearly 40 remarkable years. Jay is looking forward to the next chapter in his life, during which we expect him to continue to be an advocate for the good things that he's done over the course of his career, and to follow in his indomitable footsteps. I am happy to introduce to you Susan Muir, our new Parks and Recreation Director.
Thank you, Jeff. And I think in the very near future, there will be a little information on our website with some of her background, as we've done with our department heads. But Susan, welcome. I think today is day number 2, so the learning curve is about like that. So we're to our portion of the meeting where we have an invitation for citizens for public comment, and anyone who would like to address the council on topics other than a topic already that is on the agenda tonight, a matter that is in litigation, a quasi-judicial land use matter, or a matter scheduled for a public hearing at some future date, may address the council. And again, during this piece of our meeting, it's primarily you having comments to us and just bringing us your concerns. Typically, we don't have much of a dialogue, but it's an opportunity for you to express to the council. So anyone that would like to come, please state your name and sign in, and then you can address the council.
My name is Alan Zanazowski. I'm a friend of the airport, and I'm here tonight to convince you to redraw our leases. The numerous hangar owners out at the airport are loyal. They've been paying their taxes for years, and then suddenly a new person comes along and gets a better deal. He's spending a lot of money. It's wonderful, and I'm not here to change the deal that he's made, but it's not fair to the rest of us. It's wonderful that he's building a hangar, and he's got a small airplane that's going to use a lot of fuel. We're all going to benefit from that. That's not the issue. The issue is the public airport. Everybody's treated the same, and I know that all you feel the same way, that nobody should have an advantage or given a special deal. And all we're asking for, we're not asking for any money, we're just asking for an extension of our lease as proposed for his lease. And what that'll do for the community is we won't have rusted old hangars like we have out there that belong to the city. Not that they couldn't be fixed up, it's just that nobody's interested. But if you own them, of course you keep them that way. We have a lot of money invested in the hangar because we have a lot of money invested in the hangar. It'll be easier for us to get a loan on the money. I personally paid cash for mine, but there's a lot of people that it makes better sense to lease on the way the money is allocated, or to get a loan from the bank, but they can't get a loan because it doesn't run long enough. And you people know about business, but what have I forgotten here?
Well, Alan, we're going to have, that is on the agenda tonight, and if you
Oh, it is?
Yes, we're going to have that under, let's see, it's under one of the resolutions. It's an ordinance that we're going to be talking about. And so, again, you've shared some thoughts, but we can't have a dialogue in that it's going to be something that's coming up.
Okay.
But
Oh.
if you'd like to have a conversation when we bring this up a little later tonight, you're more than welcome.
Well, Mike briefed you on the meeting before. He covered it very well, and so I'll sit down and wait for that then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Anyone else like to address the council this evening?
My name is Colleen Schroeder. I live at 302 Dayton Avenue, which is a dead-end street now. When I was a child, it was the main road to 3 Mile Lane. But when the new bridge was built, it was vacated, and it's now a dead-end street. At the end of Dayton Avenue is where I live. There is a parking strip and a sidewalk. And I have been having gangs of teenagers hanging out down there, making a mess, being rude, disrespectful, throwing things into my yard. This is a sampling of what I pick up every day after they've been there. Today I went down. This is something from the court that was ripped into shreds, and it says something, I couldn't find all the pieces, and I'm not a very good jigsaw puzzle person, but it is something about if you do not appear, you will be arrested. I have a cement retaining wall that runs the length of my property. They're doing graffiti on it, not using spray paint. They're scratching it into the concrete, which I figure is going to be harder for me to get rid of. The amazing thing is they can't even spell their gutter language. And they were down there during the school months all the time. I've called the police officers, and they've come, but they said because, at least the kids told me, that they've told them they're welcome to be there. It's city property. But they are not welcome to leave a mess. Also was a used condom today. I didn't bring you that. There are pants in there. They're burned out. They're setting small fires. And down there, there's a lot of dead brush and trees. It would be a major, major problem if a fire started down there. It would be very difficult to put out. When I come in and out of my driveway, they give me the high sign, if you know what I mean. They yell at me, "Have a nice day," and they're taunting me. I don't feel secure. I've lived there 43 years and never had this problem. I've lived in this town. I was born in this town. I've lived here my whole life, except for when I went away to school. My husband and I, after college, decided this is where we were coming back. But the livability is not good, and I know you're struggling with this homeless problem. But these kids, I think, are more dangerous. They're up to no good, and they are next homeless. I have one other thing I'd like to talk to you about. I own the Blue Moon on 3rd Street. We've had it for 40 years. I have young women who close up for me at night. Only one works at night. And when she closes, she does her bookwork and goes home. When the cook leaves at 10 o'clock, I have told the girls that they are to move their car from the back where they park in the lot when they arrive at work. They're to move their car to the front, right in front of the door, so that when they leave at night, they feel secure. They have been doing that. The other night, one of them got a ticket at 3:15. Granted, the sign says no parking from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. But these girls, with the climate downtown, I was there Saturday night to help one of them close. there was a bum on H bench. I have also been down there when there's somebody there on the bench, I'm guessing is schizophrenic without meds, because screaming and ranting and carrying on, they don't feel safe. I would like to have some way, they're not having a good time, they're not wasting time, they're finishing their job so they can go home. But it's 3:30, and sometimes if their books don't balance or something, it may be 4 o'clock. I need some way that they can park and get to their car and feel safe. And I think that it is the responsibility of you people to make this community livable again. Not to feel unsafe in your own home, not to feel unsafe when you leave your job. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you.
Some notes just in case. My name is Amy, and my husband and my 2 girls and I, we are building a house here. It's been a 2-year process. When we started this, I was so excited. We come from Beaverton, and I saw this community as a very family-oriented community. I have friends who grew up here. But I have to say, we are a month out from moving here. And I took my daughter 3 weeks ago to go explore the town. Sorry, I'm like almost in tears. And I did not feel like I wanted to show her. We went to the library, we walked downtown, and we did not feel safe. My husband and I, we watch these meetings monthly or when you have them, and I felt like I needed to be here to represent someone that's moving into this community. McMinnville is a great town. I know the history of it. I have friends who grew up here, and just looking out, coming in, I'm a little nervous. I'm a little nervous to raise my family here. You know, I know you had a homeless meeting yesterday. However, it was at 4 o'clock. I have a lot of mom friends that wanted to make that meeting that couldn't because it was at 4 o'clock. That people work. I feel like that time should be changed to more of a 7 o'clock time when more, moms and other people that work can make those meetings and represent themselves. And I know that, I guess, the Homeless Coalition meeting is once a month for such a complex issue and one that is getting worse. I feel like there should be met more than just once a month. Look at my notes really quickly. Make sure I didn't miss anything. My husband even wrote the mayor a letter and Remy a letter, and this was 3 weeks ago, and we haven't heard back. We wrote about our concerns. So a little disappointed in that. I appreciate Yam Hill's 10-year plan for homelessness and affordable housing. I feel like this is a much bigger issue than affordable housing, and I know this is a really hot topic right now, but I felt like I needed to represent the other, families that are about to raise their families here. And something needs to be done. And I feel like I'm a very compassionate person. McMinnville is a very compassionate community. However, there's a boundary there that needs to happen. I was even talking with someone that is doing the soup kitchens, and they're saying that there's a lot more new homeless, new representation coming into McMinnville, knowing that they're going to be taken care of no matter what they do. I guess there's now a bus line from Portland to downtown McMinnville, which a free bus ride, I guess, or very cheap, which they are coming into this town. This town is a small town. It does not have the resources or the budget to really handle this issue, and especially if you're going to have a meeting once a month. I know that, meetings like this, citizens can talk about, can come up with concerns, but as someone coming into this town, I would really like to know what strategies McMinnville is going to be doing to address this problem. I'm a little apprehensive of leaving such a family-oriented city to come here where, I on social media, I hear all about how parents cannot take their kids to parks because there's needles everywhere. I mean, to me, I go to a park with my kids in Beaverton all the time, and to come here and have a list of parks that I shouldn't take my kids to because there's drug paranoia, or paranoia, can't think of the word, that's disturbing. That is very disturbing. And even downtown to not feel safe. And so I come to you as a concerned citizen moving into your community, and I would really like to know what those steps are of how we're going to combat that and how we can make this a family-oriented city once again. I love McMinnville. I love the history. However, safety is becoming a concern. And so, thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Anyone else like to address the council?
Good evening. I won't be long. My name is Steve Gertz. I was born and raised in New York City, lived in Los Angeles for 47 years. 3 years ago, I moved to McMinnville. I love McMinnville, Oregon. I'm going to die here. But before I die a natural death, I may die of horror because Ford Street, I live on Ford Street between 1st and Washington, but Ford Street between 1st and 2nd Street has become a transient living room, and bedroom, and rec room, and everything else you can think of. I have witnessed junkies, unconscious, scratching their face, scratching their bare bellies. For better or worse, I know junkie behavior when I see it. I have found syringes on the curb strip in front of my house. Well, I'm not afraid for my own personal safety. I can take care of myself. I'm concerned about young children walking up and down the street. It's gotten to the point now where I walk that's part of Ford Street so often that now these people are saying hello to me. I'm a compassionate person. We're all compassionate people here. McMinnville's a compassionate city. But at a certain point, our compassion becomes encouragement. And there has to be a boundary set. I spent 15 minutes on the phone this morning with a wonderful member of the police department here in McMinnville who explained to me, or tried to explain to me, what the situation is. He went through the 3 types of transients they are, the fact that there is no legal way we can get rid of these people without getting into trouble. So I'm wondering, surely there must be legislation that can be passed at a local level that can control this issue within the boundaries set by the 9th Circuit Court of Appeals, as I was informed this morning. Perhaps it was you that I spoke to, sir. In any case, I come here with no solutions, unfortunately. I hate that. When I was been a boss in the past, I hate people coming to me with problems, but not presenting solutions. But that's what you guys are here for. So I'm hoping that somehow, some way, we can get a handle on this problem, have some legislation passed, remain compassionate, but not foolish. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Others?
Hello, my name is Shannon Brooks. I live over on Morgan Lane, which is by Thompson Park. A group of neighbors and I formed a neighborhood watch group about a year ago. We came to several of these meetings, so a lot of you might recognize some of us. We had some drug problems in the neighborhood. We thankfully have gotten I won't say gotten rid of, but we've turned things around quite a bit with the help of the neighborhood, the police department, the city of McMinnville. So I want to say thank you for everybody that helped in that process. I came here tonight with the same concerns that the three people in front of me just talked about, so I won't bore you with any more of that because my talk was going to be exactly the same as what you've heard. But it definitely is a problem. Another thing that I came here tonight to talk about was the fact that we need more police presence in McMinnville. They're doing a great job, but I know that they're thin and they can't be everywhere that they need to be. I don't know what it's going to look like to get that to happen, but I think a lot of us will agree that it's something that needs to come at a higher priority, or a high priority, to make the community feel safe. I also am on a lot of social media sites for the community. I don't say much, I usually just listen and take it all in. And a lot of the feedback I'm seeing are people complaining that there's no police presence when some of these illegal activities are happening. I know that they're still going to happen. It's just the way it is. It's reality. And the police are doing a great job. Like I said, they're doing everything that they possibly can. But I know they're stretched thin, and we need to find a way to get them in the community more so that the community will feel safe. And I think that just will help a lot of the situation that's going on with everybody's concerns. So.
Thank you, Shannon, and
Thank you.
we'll take your comments to heart.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Yes.
Shannon, I wanted to take a moment just to point out that you said that you had addressed some of the concerns in your neighborhood through forming a neighborhood watch. And
Yes.
I really applaud that effort. As we are taking on a lot of different challenges in our city, there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of muddled conversations. The one that I've heard from the folks that have come up here tonight is aligning our entire homeless population with a population of people that uses drugs.
Exactly.
Um,
Right.
So I really applaud your effort in doing that, and I think that as we work together, and certainly this council is not only aware, but is working very diligently on addressing many, if not all of the issues brought up, including how to best support our police department. I really hope that others can model your effort because as we look to these problems, these two very impactful but different problems that sometimes cross over one another, homelessness being one, drug addiction being the other. And we see a pretty small amount of that crossover, but it certainly is present. I hope that others can model your effort and not only say, what are you going to do, but do what you're doing, which is to find ways to take action themselves to help reduce drug use and reduce homelessness in our community. So thank you for
I agree, and thank
your
you.
effort.
That was very nice of you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Scott, could I
Go ahead.
suggest one other thing?
gonna
You
stay
had
here.
mentioned just briefly about police presence,
Yes.
and what you have to understand is even though last November we made a decision to hire 3 more police, well, actually I think it was earlier than that, in October, there was still the process of hiring, and then there's a tremendous amount of time involved in training police officers. So I don't know, how soon will we see most of those people on the street?
We have 5 in the academy right now, so by not until the end or around mid-February that you're going to actually see those 5 all be soloed in on their own, so February. So it's obviously a year and a half.
But we're
Yeah.
working on it.
No, and I understand it's a long process. I know a little bit of the inside there, so I do know it's a long process, and they're doing a great job, so I'm just wanted to throw that out there, that it needs to happen.
But I want people to understand that there is a
That's good to
process,
know, 'cause
a
I don't know
certain amount
that-
of training that has to happen
Yeah.
for people to, it's just not something you do immediately.
I agree, and yeah, I think it's good that probably not everybody understood that, so,
Thank you.
thanks.
Any other comments? Again, thank you, Shannon.
Thanks.
Good to see you. Anyone else?
Hi, I am Stacy Martin, and I am a property owner downtown, a longtime resident, cheerleader for McMinnville, and very proud of our community. I also have seen a big change in the downtown. I had occasion to call the city and was sent to the police and had a great support system. But I would like to ask the question of this council, are there some things that we can do to help the property owners, especially downtown, where people are on the sidewalk in the city's property? Are there ordinances that have no camping in the city, no loitering? Certainly the police presence, the neighborhood watch is all wonderful. But as a citizen, not only do we have homelessness, drugs, we have mental illness, we have tourism, we have we have this big, wonderful mix that's McMinnville. And I don't know that I'm trained to deal with the kind of folks that we're seeing on our front lawns, speaking personally. So I would like to ask that question, and we know it's timely, but are there some things that can happen immediately? And then also the long term, someone's camping in McMinnville, you're not allowed to be there, what's the next step? Because as was mentioned before, we are a compassionate group. There's a lot of people doing a lot of good work, but I don't know that we have the tools. I'm thinking about the churches, the community groups, but we don't have the tools to put it all together. And so I think the city can take action to give us some quick help and then formulate the long-term plans. Thank you.
Any questions for Stacy? Thank you, Stacy. Any other comments that would like to be brought before the council? Good evening, Richard.
Good evening. This is a matter that some of you may recall. I came before the City Council last year.
Richard, could you identify yourself and your address for the record?
Yes. My name is Richard Anderson, and I live at 960 Edmonston Street here in McMinnville. Last year I came before you to talk about a situation with land next to my property. In 1888, when Cosign's third edition subdivision became part of McMinnville, certain land was set aside for use as roads if necessary. And the rules specifically say that if the land is not needed for roads, it will be returned to the subdivision and attached to the nearest property within the subdivision. And that's my property. In the decades past, houses have been built up. The road is totally unnecessary now. And I had asked you if you could start a process to consider vacating the land. And you were very receptive to that, but you asked me to first try mediation. I have done that. It didn't work out with the neighbors. They have said they wouldn't sign the normal procedure to go through. And so I had asked you to start the alternate method of going through. And so after more than a century, it can be returned to the tax rolls. And I'll just pass these out to refresh your memories on what the problem was, then I'll be done.
I can pass them down if you'd like to give me the stack. Yeah, there we go.
Sir,
Richard?
could you get one more? Or do you have one?
I do.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Richard. Any questions? Many of us were here when Mr. Anderson came initially, and we asked him to, again, address his neighbors with the adjoining property. So this is, I guess, a follow-up on that, and, we may have an opportunity to look at it and then discuss it at a meeting down the road once we become familiar. I think there's at least two of you that may not have been a part of those discussions. So we'll bring that up again, and I'll keep it. And Melissa, could you just put that as an agenda item at a later date? Thank you. Any other comments to be brought before the council this evening? Okay, hearing none, then we'll move on. Just from a council and a mayor's perspective, I think Remy really summarized the feelings of the council. We are very much aware of the livability of this community. I mean, we've moved here, we've stayed here, and we're giving our personal time to ensure that the livability of this community remains what it ought to be, and what excites us and what is our passion. We're moving forward. We're moving forward thoughtfully in this process. And so be aware that we have many discussions, and it's not just once a month in these various committees, but the council, as a matter of fact, a part of the council talked tonight about some alternatives that we might be looking at. And so from my perspective, we've heard your message. We're not going to not address those issues. It is very critical to us and staff, and so just let me share with you that we appreciate you coming and sharing thoughts with us tonight. I mean, this is a part of the process. We need to hear of your concerns. We do find that there's all kinds of different sides of the story, so to speak, and we're trying to work through that thoughtfully as a community, and we will do this in the McMinnville way, which is the right way, and having the right partners at the table and moving forward on this, and it's our desire to address those concerns. So thank you for coming this evening, those that have testified to us. With that being said, that now takes us to some presentations that we have this evening. Our first presentation is going to be from the Yamhill County Gospel Rescue Mission, and if Kay and Dave will come up and address us. Welcome, both of you. It's good to see you.
Thank you. It's been a little bit since I've been here to talk about the expansion and the progress that we're making at the mission to provide more beds. Did everybody get a copy in your packet of the campaign update? I wasn't sure if that went out. There's a couple corrections. I spoke to Dave a little bit later, and I wanted to update that a little bit on the numbers. In the report, we talked about the shelter being completed and opened for the winter. The fundraising overall, I had mentioned in the letter that it was around a little over 850,000. It's actually over the million mark now, which is amazing to me. This community has been very supportive with this project in cash pledges and gifts in kind. So overall, in cash, we're over 400,000. So we should be able to start building the men's facility this coming fall, or at least starting it. So we are moving ahead, and I've heard what everybody has said tonight, and I totally understand where everyone's coming from. but also from a personal perspective, I see a side of the city and the county, and the city especially, as being such a great help in what we've been doing to help the homeless and to provide more space and to provide that emergency housing where it's needed desperately. I've had so many contacts over the years, and I was happy to see Doug Montgomery here. He was here in the beginning. I don't think Bob's here tonight, but he was also here in the beginning, Bob Poskins, and it's been a long haul, and we've come a long way, and we couldn't have done that without the support of the city and the help of all the departments, and I think David's going to address that in a little bit more, but I just wanted the community to know as well as I sit here that the city is working on this, and they have supported us along the way, and we have been able to open up this shelter. It opened the day after Thanksgiving. It was a very big success. We almost doubled what the winter shelters were housing people last year. So the capacity for, or at least the number of people coming in, was almost double that. So we were getting a very good response. We were full, so we were averaging 35 people. So we had to open up some beds over at the main facility for the overflow. You'd think it'd be the other way around, but it turned out, because our capacity for the shelter is much, much larger. So I just wanted to share that with you, that was a success, and we couldn't have done it without the speed of the city helping us get that open, because there was a lot of bumps along the way, I should say. So that's one thing I just wanted everybody to know, that the city has been helping, and they have been doing things, and this is one of them, and we are probably the triage phase of the whole big picture. But it's been a very big success. So I just wanted to put that out there. We've probably, over the 4-month period, I would say there was about a little over 3,700 people that we were able to house. One of the things that we do in the wintertime, and we've done this always, we are a clean and sober facility, but in the wintertime we relax that because we don't want anybody dying out there, freezing to death, or anything bad happening to them. So it was a little chaotic, and I think Matt can probably attest to that, because they were out there a lot this last winter. But we were able to control it, and it did work out. We're going to probably do a few things differently to make that better. But you have a lot of people in a small space that are under the influence of something. You're probably going to have some problems, but it's nothing we can't deal with, and I'm glad we can provide that service. One of the things I did want to mention, and talking about social media, I've seen a lot of information going out about people wondering, well, we need a shelter. Why don't we have a shelter in McMinnville? Maybe somebody needs to get together and make a shelter. And so I think there's a lot of people really don't even know we exist, and that's part of the problem. So I've been trying to get that information out to the people. One of the things that I think a lot of our provider, other partners that we work with, thought was that we closed after the winter because it was to mainly house for cold weather, but we are open all year long for immediate needs. So anybody that does come in can still use the shelter. We had to bring it down to a couple of days to open it just because of the capacity. We didn't have that many people. So we bring them into the main facility. So if we have too many in the main facility, we will open up the shelter. So it's something I'm trying to get out to the community, and I want to make sure that everybody on the council and in the community understands that, no, the shelter is all year round, and it will house up to as many as we can have capacity in both the shelter and the main facility. So that was another thing I wanted to clarify, and hope that everybody learns that we do have a place that the homeless can come. The difference in the summer is that it's just clean and sober, and there is space there. So that was one of the other items. We also, last time we were here, we were talking about Macy's Street. So with the help of the city, we were able to obtain Macy Street. I think this week is when it's the 30 days, I think, that waiting period.
Mike's nodding his head saying,
This week, yay! So as of this week, hopefully that will become part of our property and we'll be able to use that for additional parking. It's also going to help with building design, being able to make it a little larger in areas we weren't planning. So that'll be a big help with especially the parking. So we're working with the neighbor next door and we should be able to lease the other half of that street from them for a while. And so we'll be able to plan accordingly. And so that's moving ahead. The men's facility, after the men's facility is complete, we plan on remodeling the women's facility, and we've been getting a lot of help with pledges and donations just for that and the children's part of it. So that's pretty much a quick update as to what we're doing and what we're trying to accomplish. But I do want to say thank you very much for all the help that we've had. It's just been amazing. And I wish the community knew, as you know, more so than the people here, that everybody knew that you guys have really been doing a lot. So does anybody have any questions about the project?
Yeah, thank you, Kay, for coming. I talked to Dave and how important it was for you to come and keep us informed. I know a number of us have been out to your facility prior to the improvements that have been made out there. But any questions for Kay from anyone?
Only what more we can do to continue to support your work, which has just been tremendous, and the expansion, the street vacation, doubling your beds, it's all very impressive, and we're very grateful for the work that you're doing, and please let us know as you continue to grow and do more.
Thank you. And I'll let Dave.
I know Dave has some words to say in a possible presentation, so go ahead, Dave.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name's Dave Hagerberg. I live at 13951 Northwest Willis Road in McMinnville. And I'm here in really a couple of roles, but one of them is, contrary to what I said about never being on another board, I did decide to become a member of the board of the mission, and I'm the vice chair of that board. But I'm really here tonight because I'm the president of the McMinnville Area Community Foundation. And the foundation has, as you know, made a commitment to partner with the mission on what we think is one of the most critically important issues facing this community in this area, and that's this whole homeless issue. Can we solve it all? No, we can't. But the mission and the foundation and the city and the county and many, many private citizens are really moving a project forward that can make a difference in this community and provide things. Kay mentioned, we now have a shelter now that it's available year-round for up to 35 people. And it's an incredible accomplishment. The next thing is the men's facility, which really is a major part of the expansion, and that's to add that facility and the capacity and to make a difference in providing programs that help people move their lives forward. So the foundation is proud to be a partner in this process, and I will tell you that the reason that I'm here tonight is to express the appreciation and to recognize certain individuals in this city for their commitment and the work that they have done in moving homeless issues forward in this community. What I know is that it's always easy in this world for people to be critical and to criticize particularly government officials and government agencies, and yet when they do really great work, you don't hear about that very often. And the foundation and the mission said that we really wanted this city council to know about the work of your staff and to recognize them, and we've got a special way we want to recognize them, and Mr. Mayor, I'll leave that to you, and we can call them up, but I'd like to recognize some of those, the people that we think were incredibly important to the work that the mission had. And I will tell you to start with that it starts at the top, and that's Mike Bissett. And when I said to Mike that we wanted to come to the council and to make a presentation and recognize the work that he and his entire department does, he said, well, why are you doing that, Dave? We get paid for it. Well, you know what? They do get paid for it. But it isn't hard to recognize when people do far and above what they're expected to do in terms of their commitment and the time they spend, the advice they give, the work they make, and help projects happen. I will just give you one example. Kay and I met with Mike and some of his people about this project and about vacating Macy Street. And he said, well, there's a long process, and here's what all the things to do. But he says, we'll get out an outline, and we'll put it all together and show you what it takes and what has to happen. The next day, out of his department came that outline of everything that had to happen to get to the point that that street would be vacated this week. And that happened a long time ago, and that happened every single time because people did the work and the commitment. That is one small example. But when you go down to the list and you think about in the past, you think about people like Doug Montgomery, who's here tonight. Doug was here from the very beginning of the whole process of providing for the expansion of this. And, you know, you can't put in words the contribution some people have made to this community. It's about the results. And what Doug Montgomery and Ron Pomeroy did is in the planning department in the initial setup and how this whole process went forward. Did they play favorites? Absolutely not. But they were always there and saying, here's what you can do, here's what you can't do. And we'd say, how do we move forward? And they absolutely were the epitome of what Joe Dancer and Kent Taylor and all these you would expect of the people to do, you know, in their work in this community. And you had, moving forward, you had Candace Haynes as a city attorney who always was there to give advice and to make sure that we did it right, but that we knew a path to get there, and not just what you couldn't do, but how you moved a project forward in this city. You know, we can't say enough about Robert Poskin. Robert is a building inspector that understands the rules, and he was absolutely responsive in every instance about how and where we proceeded and what it took to make this project happen. Just an incredible human being. So we're really fortunate to have him with McMinnville. And then you've got currently one of the people that was a key to help moving this project forward in terms of Macy Street, that it provides for a bigger expansion of the men's facility, is our new city planning, Heather Richards. And with meetings with our city attorney, David Kosh, we found paths to move those things forward. So having said all of that, what we thought as a foundation was not only to say in words, Mr. Mayor, what they have done, but to come up with a program that would reflect the significance of the accomplishment of these individuals. So the foundation has decided to create a grant of $5,000 to the mission, and it's a matching grant. So for every $2 the community puts up, we'll put up another $1. That will raise $15,000, and it's all going to go for the kitchen in the Women and Children's facility. Will it buy all of the new equipment and all the remodeling? It will not. But we as a foundation will continue to find ways to augment those funds. And when the kitchen is done, it will be a kitchen that will be in recognition of the city staff that we've talked about and the people that aren't listed that are the backup for these folks that make things happen. And we will see that there is a plaque appropriately in that room recognizing the contribution of the people of your department, the Building and Planning Department, to this whole project and to the homeless. So I would just like to say, Mr. Mayor, how much we appreciate the opportunity to come and recognize some outstanding people that are absolutely committed not only to this community, but to the people that are less fortunate. So thank you for that opportunity, Mr. Mayor.
Dave, well put. And what I'd like to do at this point, we do have a number of individuals that have come back, and so Doug and Candace and Heather and Dave and Mike and Ron, if you'd stand so that we can just recognize you public with applause. So if...
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so very much. Our second presentation this evening is we're going to have call on Gary Eastland of Hagen Hamilton to provide the report of our 2017-18 property liability, workman's compensation, and auto insurance coverages, as Gary does every year for us. So welcome, Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. It's good to see y'all. I apologize if I inconvenienced you by missing the last meeting.
You made our meeting a little shorter. So
Okay,
no.
I apologize. Well, I'll try to keep this brief, but you have copies of the stewardship report, which I put together every year. Just to give some of you a little bit, this is just a highlight. It's a very brief document which just kind of compares the current policy renewal with the prior expiring. And it also allows you opportunities to ask me about other types of coverages or other types of policies that may or may not be available. So with that said, you can see from the document that City County Insurance Services is providing a good renewal. It's a 4.1% increase over last year. A significant part of that is that the property values were all trended 2%. So that increase, that was a big part of that increase. So technically it's a fairly flat renewal, which is always that's always a good thing. The workers' compensation actually went down a little bit for two reasons. The national rates went down slightly, and the mod went down slightly. So that shows that things are trending in the right direction as far as management goes, and the mod we have right now is a 0.76, which is excellent, so that's going in the right direction. The airport liability policy is written because it's excluded under the city-county program, so we have a separate policy for the airport liability. And that remained exactly the same as it has the last 3 years. So it's we didn't see any increase there either. So I think the main thing about it is the program. The City County Insurance Group is owned by the cities and counties of the state of Oregon, and it's probably the most successful risk retention group of its type in the nation. I know they have a lot of other states that are trying to copy what they're doing. The thing they can't copy is that Oregon is a very profitable place for insurance companies to do business. And the main reason for that is we don't get hurricanes, we don't get hail, significant hail damage that is, and we don't get a lot of tornadoes, and our legal system is still relatively conservative. So and people respect each other. So it's a very good place to live, and this is one of the reasons why this program has been so successful. And I encourage you to I just want you to know that even though we don't go out to get bids every year, and the reason for that is there is nobody that can compete with them. One brief example, which I gave to Mr. Mayor at the Water and Light presentation, we do insure a lot of public entities, and one of them was a district which could no longer obtain insurance through the Oregon Special Districts Group. We had to replace that policy with 6 policies. The premium went from $60,000 to $160,000, and that's what most states are faced with, is that type of an insurance option. So that said, that was a unique situation, but we are very happy with the support we get from the city-county insurance program. Just to kind of keep it brief here, but if there's any questions or anything, anybody? Yes, Kevin?
I remember reading recently in one of the the LOC magazines about the recreational liability.
Yes.
Could you talk about that a little bit and how that might be impacting
Yes,
us?
what that was is there was an incident in Portland where where an individual employee was named in a lawsuit and was not allowed the protection under the Oregon tort law for failure to maintain, I believe that was a trail, and there was an injury, a runner was injured on the trail, and that particular person was named in a lawsuit and was not allowed to have protection under the Oregon statutory law. David probably knows this a lot better than I do. But what they've done is they did just pass, this legislature passed a law which changed the wording just slightly to make sure that individuals, employees, and all other members of the communities are covered the same as the communities themselves. So it's nothing that created any more large exposures. They created a lot of created exposures, but there weren't any other incidents that I know of that created lawsuits. So it's I believe it's been addressed.
Oh, good. I've heard a lot of communities that were closing trails and tennis
Yeah, there
courts
was
and
it was
skate parks.
a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction, which is okay. As a risk manager, the best way to eliminate risk is to avoid it completely.
Right.
But we can't live in a box, so we have to then take the next step. And that's, but that's good. I was appreciative that the legislature did move on that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Gary or discussion among the council?
Adam. Yeah.
Adam, go ahead.
So it's less than 1% of everything we're discussing in this, but the airport liability policy, what would be drivers to raise that number if it was to ever go up? We've had the races out there and possibly an air show, and we're looking at doing
Yeah, that's a good question, because that's one of the things. Obviously, we're looking at alternative revenue sources, and with those come additional exposures, most of which are going to be addressed by a city attorney and with regard to contracts and leases and transfers. But the biggest thing would be is if there was a lot of claims. That's be the driving force where we would no longer have access to the markets that we have now. Right now, once again, in Oregon, it's a very competitive market because there isn't as many claims as there are in other communities. But it just depends on which direction the city decides to go in the future, and it's something that I've offered to be involved in to make sure that I can provide any kind of impact statements with regard to costs, insurance costs in particular. If we did decide to expand the operations or take over the operations, whatever, I have no idea what the conversation is, but
Appreciate the clarification.
but
Thank
it
you.
is available.
Thank you, Adam. Any other discussion,
Yeah,
Alan?
just a quick one, Gary.
Yes, Alan.
On the city experience modification factor for workman's comp,
Yeah.
it dropped.
Right.
Is that from lack of claims also, or?
It's
is
a
it just whole-
combination of things. So he had a bad year 5 years ago. And the way the mod works, as you're probably familiar, is they take the last 4 years. They don't use the most current one because claims haven't developed. So it's really the 3 years combined. Then they average the number of losses and paid claims in a formula called the experience modification factor. So when 1 year drops out, then the most current one drops in. The one that dropped in was a very good year, and the one that dropped out there was more activity. And one other piece on that, which is another conversation with Water and Light, we used to combine them with us on our workers' compensation. 3 years ago, they initiated it. They said we would like to have our own policy, if that's possible. And it was. We set up a separate policy for them, and just interestingly enough, their mod dropped also. So the performance of both policies both organizations has been very good. So
Thank you.
we're looking good towards the future there.
Alan and council, as we had our recognition for our Public Works Week, it's just very obvious to me that safety is paramount in tracking and the discussion around that. So I think some of our department heads and Mike and the group really put a lot of effort into that. And
I agree.
It shows itself when we're looking at the insurance coverage.
It should be recognized, I believe.
Okay, any other discussion or questions for Gary? Thank you for your presentation, Gary. I'm going to ask for a motion to renew the city's insurance coverage through CIS for fiscal year 2017-18 for property liability and workman's compensation, and on a separate policy to renew the airport owners and operators liability coverage. Do I have a motion?
Second.
It has been moved by Council President Mankey, and it has been seconded by Councilor Garvin. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by saying nay? This motion passes unanimously in favor. Again, thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
Our second, or our third presentation tonight is, we'll call Heather up to provide a report on House Bill 4079, UGB Affordable Housing Pilot Projects Application Submittal, and the information's in your packet on that. So, Heather? And I think there's been some additional information that was left on our daises in front of our seats on that.
Yes, so good evening, Mayor and City Councilors. I did leave on your, at your chairs tonight, a McMinnville 2017 soils map, and then a table of measures to encourage affordable and needed housing. I provide those because there's some detailed information there, and we're going to go through it a little bit. There's also copies of them on the back table as well. So you invited me to come back and talk about the House Bill 4079 pilot program after we gave you a presentation on the Affordable Housing Task Force work that they've done over the past year. This is one program that they looked at as an opportunity for the city of McMinnville, so I wanted to share it with you, and we've been working on this diligently over the last couple of weeks, going through a vetting process. I'm not sure, I think someone from the Department of Land Conservation and Development from the state is here as well. Am I right? Maybe. But we've been working with them in partnership on this. This is a state initiative. What I want to do tonight is describe what the program is to you, describe the process for review by the McMinnville Affordable Housing Task Force, the work that they've been doing in a little bit more detail, describe to you the vetting process we did to look at properties for this, and then how we're moving forward from here. You've seen this slide before. I thought it would be important to bring it back, but this is a bill that addresses affordable housing. There is some rumors in the community that this is a project to address homelessness and to do a UGB amendment for a homeless shelter. It is actually a bill that's directly targeting affordable housing. And why it's important to McMinnville is we do have 4,048 households that are considered house burden. So they are households that are putting more money into their home, more than 30% of their household income into their home, which makes them vulnerable to losing their homes. And that equates to over 9,000 residents. So we have a lot of residents who are in a vulnerable position that could really partake in an affordable housing program. House Bill 4079 is a result of 2016 legislative session, and what it does is it tries to answer the question, unique to Oregon is the urban growth boundary, and affordable housing is a significant issue here in Oregon. Do UGBs increase housing prices? So i.e., anecdotally, does limited land supply in the urban center increase the land value, which then translates into higher housing costs, and is that why we have an affordable housing problem? So the hypothesis that's being tested by this project is if UGB rules are relaxed to bring in land that would not otherwise be urbanized, the lower cost of such land will allow a set aside for affordable housing to become feasible. So this is how the legislative session set up this particular House bill. It is a pilot program because what they want to do is study this and see what the results are. It identifies 2 pilot projects to develop affordable and needed housing on land that's currently outside the UGBs as an opportunity to bring that land inside the UGB and develop it. There's 2 projects that will be selected, one for a city up to 25,000 in population and one for a city over 25,000 in population. And then they identified that cities that are located in Clackamas, Marion, Multnomah, Polk, Washington, and Jefferson counties are not eligible to participate in this program. The House bill actually identifies a list of cities that they wanted to invite to consider for this program in the House bill itself, and McMinnville was identified as one of those cities for a city over 25,000 in population. The Affordable Housing Task Force, when this came out, looked at it as an opportunity because their charge is to look at increased access to and construction of housing for citizens earning 80% or less of McMinnville's median income, and that particular performance metric is a part of this pilot program. So the House bill itself as a pilot project is looking at a site that's adjacent to the city's UGB, but is no larger than 50 acres. There can be no high-value farmland on the site. The minimum units per gross acre for both market rate units and affordable housing units is 7 dwelling units per gross acre. So for a 50-acre parcel, that would yield at least 350 dwelling units, serving approximately 1,000 residents. The House bill does have a minimum proportionality of market rate units and affordable housing units of 70% to 30%, so it's really looking at a mixed-use neighborhood in terms of different income levels for sustainability and enduring value. You have to prove that the project's likely not to be developed within the UGB. Public facilities are available, transit's planned for the future in the nearby vicinity, and the city must demonstrate its efforts to provide affordable and needed housing within the existing UGB. It is a competitive process since they're only selecting one city for each threshold of the pilot program. The pre-application is due on September 5 of this year, and then the full application, if you're invited to apply, will be in the spring of 2018. The state came to us and asked us pretty early on if McMinnville would consider participating in this program. It was developed as a response to some of the communities who are struggling with land supply and affordable housing as sort of being the test projects for this. You have to identify, McMinnville was identified as being eligible in the law. I apologize for that. And then the affordable housing piece of this, the 30% of the units that must be affordable to households up to 80% of area median income. You must be able to demonstrate that you're certifying that income, and then you must maintain that affordability for those units for 50 years. So it sets up a pretty unique scenario where the developer will probably be partnering with a nonprofit entity, a partner like a housing authority or something like that, that can do that income certification and also maintain that for 50 years through a deed restriction. And then the other piece of it that is interesting for development is it does require a phasing plan. So you proportionally are building the same number of affordable housing units as you are to market rate units, so you're not segregating the different income levels within the neighborhood. So this is a map of McMinnville's UGB. We currently have 11.8 square miles in the UGB, 10.5 square miles are within the city limits itself, and we have a little over 1 square mile of land that hasn't annexed into the city. Much of the land, so Ron and I have been looking at the map over the last couple of weeks and identifying each parcel of land that's not in the city, hasn't been annexed into the city yet, looking at ownership, looking at potential development opportunities associated with those properties to see if any of those properties would move forward with this process or not. Many of the properties are constrained by something or another, or are owned by developers who plan to develop them in the long term, but not in terms of moving forward immediately with it. So what does this yield, this program? If you assumed a 50-acre parcel, our current UGB is 7,552 acres. So if we expanded the UGB by 50 acres, we'd be expanding it by 0.6%. There's a lot of times, when you're talking about growth, it can become very emotional, and people start talking about proportionality, and I think it's important for us to understand how big the city is today and what this proportionally means in terms of expanding it. Currently in the county, the acreage that's embedded in EFU zoning, which is the surrounding zoning for the city of McMinnville's UGB, it's 192,000 acres plus a little bit. If this expansion would take place, it would impact that particular acreage by reducing it to 0.03% in terms of reduction of that EFU acreage in the entire county. So it would yield 350 units at a minimum, serving 1,000 residents, and reduce the EFU acreage in the county by 0.03%. The city is the applicant. The McMinnville Affordable Housing Task Force went through all this criteria to review whether or not it made sense to come to you as city council and suggest that you explore applying for this program. We brought it to you in the Affordable Housing Task Force presentation in June, and we got the direction to come back to you with vetting parcels and what we would do as a public process to let people know that we're interested in moving forward with this. Prior to doing that, I wanted to share with you some of the work that's taken place to sort of prep McMinnville to be in a competitive position for this. So one of the other things that's a test for this particular program is you need to show as a community that you are adopting measures that are encouraging affordable housing within the city and the UGB and needed housing. So the Affordable Housing Task Force has been working through this table of measures. It's a good document to work through anyways because it shows good land use efficiencies as well as how to encourage affordable housing within your city. And as we brought to you at our presentation, we've gone through many different elements of the code and compared it to other cities to see what, where we could improve our code to remove some of the barriers for affordable housing in this community. And we've put together several different comparison tables, and the Affordable Housing Task Force is now moving forward with recommendations on how to amend those codes and working with the Planning Commission. So to be able to apply for this program, you need to score 12 points overall in these measures, 3 as the affordable housing measures and at least 9 in the needed housing measures. If you add up where we sit today in McMinnville, we have 13 points. And with some of the changes that are being recommended by the McMinnville Affordable Housing Task Force, we could bring that all the way up to 18 to 19 points. So we meet that initial test. As I said, the pre-application is due in September, so we've been working on that. It shows your intention to apply. It shows what site you're looking at. It shows what the project will look like. So you have to start thinking about the number of housing units and potential development partners and public facilities and services. And then you have to prove it's a qualifying site. And to prove it's a qualifying site, it has to be a site that does not include high-value farmland predominantly as defined by the ORS 195.300. So that's what we've been working on over the last 2 weeks. We have a soils map that was originally done in the late 1990s. This is a copy of that. Anything that is not light green would be considered class 3 and class 4 soils, which at that time were not considered the high value farmland. So we felt that there was opportunities in some parcels surrounding the UGB to start considering this project. So we started working on updating this map with the state as our partners and going through the ORS as to what it constitutes high-value farmland. Since we put our original map together, there's been many amendments to the ORS, and there's a laundry list of checkpoints, and I just wanted to show you some of the diligent staff has been working through on this. And I want to thank John Barnes for all his efforts with collecting databases and layering them and trying to weave through the attribute tables so that we can respond to all of these. But what's different is there's several subsets of soil classifications under class 3 and class 4 soils that are now considered high-value farmland, and I've listed all of those for you. So we had to identify all of those that were in the city of McMinnville. There's also a viticultural area that's considered high-value farmland as well, so we've looked for that database attribute, and then there's several other checkpoints there too. So that yielded a very different looking map, and that's what you have in front of you. Anything does not have a color and just has white on it is not considered high value farmland. So McMinnville is in a position where we don't have one single parcel that qualifies for this program. What the audience can't see is our waterways are actually white on the map. So that's the only thing that you'll find that's white on that map. So that's our new soils map. The good news is we have it. It complies with the ORS, and we can now use it moving forward for our long-range planning efforts. The bad news is this is not a program that's going to serve McMinnville, and I think the state is disappointed as well because McMinnville was a great test program for this hypothesis of theirs because we're surrounded by high-value farmland. It has been a difficult process to expand the UGB, and we do have an affordable housing issue that we're wrestling with right now. So they were really looking forward to working with us on this. And we would like to continue to work with them to try and figure out the question of where do we go from here. So even though the House bill isn't going to work for us, at some point in time we are going to need to have a conversation, a community dialogue about growth and how do we respond to some of these needs. I'm not advocating one way or the other. I like to look at the facts and the data, and Ron and I have been looking at that over the last couple of weeks to sort of get a snapshot of things. Housing supply is constrained in McMinnville. Permit levels are very low here right now. Planning permit levels are very low here as well. It's difficult to fund public services at existing levels if your tax base doesn't grow. So with tax-based reform in Oregon, capping a tax-based growth of 3% and your public services at existing levels, costs are growing at 6 to 7% a year. It's a gap that's just going to grow bigger and bigger every year if we can't figure out how to sort of meet that sweet point so we can fund existing levels of public services. So our average annual growth rate has been in significant decline. If you look at the period from 1986 to 1996, it was 4%. Year over year, 1996 to 2006, it was 3%. 2006 to 2016, it was 1%. And then from 2010 to 2016, it was 0.5%. To put that in context, the unincorporated area of Yamhill County grew at 1.9% in that same time period that McMinnville grew at 0.5%. Our permit levels in McMinnville are concerning to me. In this first half of this year, the first 6 months, we've issued 25 single-family dwelling permits, or 25 residential permits. We haven't issued any multifamily ones. 25 in 6 months. Last year we issued 153. When we were in growth mode, we were issuing 300 permits. Grants Pass, which is a comparable community, issued 139 permits last year and currently is trending at 78 for the first 6 months. And Redmond, which obviously is a community that's in a different position in terms of growth happening right now, but a smaller community to McMinnville issued 284 permits last year and is at 176 right now for the first 6 months. So whether we choose as a value system to grow or not, there are services that need to be supported by tax base if we want to maintain livability in this community. And I think at some point in time, my role as the planning director is to bring the information to the community and to you as the decision-making body to start talking about how do we make informed decisions to satisfy the values that we want to have as a community moving forward. So I just wanted to put some of that data on the table. I was hoping that with this House bill, we would be able to do some short-term solutions for the housing situation here in McMinnville, because any sort of long-term, long-range planning solution is at least 5 years out right now to get to a constructed project. So McMinnville really is the epicenter of finding the balance of maintaining a healthy community and protecting farmland resources. And the state is interested in helping us have that dialogue and helping it bring information to the community so we can continue to have a good, robust dialogue about our future. So.
Any questions for Heather? I mean, I loved it up to that last 2 slides.
Well, and what I didn't share with you, so in that same time period, so I'm a data geek, but I think it tells the facts, right? In the same time period of 1986 to 2016, our population grew by 216%. our land supply grew by 20%. That's not bad. That's the Oregon Land Use Program. That's what it's trying to achieve, but you're trying to find the sweet spot in there in terms of proportionality. Of that growth of our land supply, that 20% land supply growth, over 60% of it was for non-residential lands. So.
The question I have, Heather, is I know this, in the House bill, it's very specific. If there are no communities that have the soil maps would show that there's, if they come out like us, will they readdress that, do you think, within the House bill, or are the statutes within that House bill so specific that they can't step out of that without going back into session and amending that?
Yeah, so the House bill is now law. And, so I don't think they would be able to change the House bill. It's very specific in there in terms of what it's a qualifying site, and it has to show that it doesn't have predominance of high-value farmland, which is 50% or more. I do know there are many communities who have been looking at this, and because of the amount of work that needs to be put into play to get the 50 acres for affordable housing project, there are many communities that have backed off of it. Medford's interested in it. I was at a meeting 2 weeks ago, a Planners Network meeting where we talked about this program, and Medford is interested, but they haven't had any other interest outside of McMinnville at this point in time. I know the state is looking for more interest, so hopefully they will be able to get some. It is a great pilot project. What they're trying to determine is, can the market rate housing underwrite the affordable housing? Can a developer build something if they're able to get through the process for UGB amendment and the land value starts to come down because you're opening land supply? Can that market rate profit margin help subsidize the affordable housing product? So,
any other questions for Heather?
Yeah, Heather, you mentioned that that there's interest in continuing to have a relationship to address this problem in McMinnville. What does that look like moving forward? Like, have you guys talked about how we will continue to work together?
No, so this map was finished today at 2:30, and we've been working on it for the last 2 weeks. That's how difficult it was to get through that ORS checklist and find all the database attributes that are in there and start carving them off and illustrating them on the map. And we were working closely with the state team to do that. At the end of the process, though, we all had a dialogue, you know, what a bummer. My question to them was, I said, look, we need your help. And the help isn't there's no preconceived solution. Nobody's talking about that, but how to bring the information to the community so that the community can have the conversation they want to have. So.
Well, thank you for all the work. It's
absolutely
fascinating and very important for us to know.
Kelly?
Nothing wrong. So, assuming they get started on it this year, our overall housing will go up substantially, at least our permits and things like that, correct?
It should. I mean, I guess I would suggest, so that's
basically what you're saying is we just don't have much more land to go with.
Yeah. So if you look at the map, and Ron was very helpful to me because he understands the history of who owns what and what their phasing plan for subdivisions are. So we sat down and looked at the map because that was my question. Is there any other, we can't rely on one subdivision to solve our problem. A community of 35,000 should not be processing one large subdivision a year. So are there any other developable properties that don't already have a booked subdivision plan on them that could come in and be developed? What's the next one, right? And there aren't a lot of properties available for that. And so when I say that, you know, to get to a built product is at least 5 years down the road, that's an expedited time frame.
That is frightening.
Because that's land supply, that's planning, that's investment, that's infrastructure, that's building. So there's a lot of smaller projects coming in. We are seeing subdivisions of 10 units or less. So we are seeing, the good news is we are seeing a lot of interest in parcels that want to have zone changes to upzone their property from a lower density residential zone to an R4 zone. That's nice to see. I think we'll see some multifamily projects in the next couple of years, but they're not I mean, they're good. Those are always good projects. They're not as many as I think we would want to have for a community this size to even serve that 0.5% population growth.
Thank you for clarifying that for me.
For me, one of the things that I really liked about this House bill was that you had a requirement for affordable housing, and that was integrated with housing that did not have to be, did not have to qualify as affordable housing for the community. So as we look at these other projects, I really think the question we now need to ask ourselves is how do we take the sentiment of this, which is that, you know, I mean, that subdivision will provide more housing. It will not necessarily provide more affordable housing. So as we do see zone changes come before us, and as we progress down this path of needing to encourage affordable housing, what can we as a city do to guarantee that a certain percentage of the housing that is constructed, whether it's new housing or zone change, or, you know, if we look at potential vertical housing, but what do we do to guarantee that not just a few people are making a lot of money as they develop and sell, but that also serves the greater community and provides the needed housing? Or that a few people are making a lot of money and providing affordable housing.
Yeah, but you have to look at it from a reasonable standpoint. I mean, they're putting out a lot of money up front to do this type of building, and if the land value is high, the best place to go look for land is outside the UGB if you can find it.
Well, I wasn't trying to entertain a UGB conversation. I guess that's kind of what I'm saying is to that is such an in-depth and long-term conversation that has to take place on such a broad scale of, you know, our entire city. What can we do within the confines of our city to mandate some more affordable housing?
Well, I think one thing that makes me feel fairly comfortable that the market conditions, as we went through that Baker Creek subdivision, and that has affordable housing a part of it with higher density, and it wasn't pushed by us, but the market did that. And as I look at the buildable land in the foreseeable future, as we move across the street, is going to be developed by the same developer, and there's a sense in my as we went through that process that was the approach that they may be even taking across the street. Now that's one piece of property. It's a lot of property that's going to take short term and maybe some intermediate terms to get to where we want to go. But I'm seeing at least a realization by developers to have higher density than we've ever seen before. That was a tough discussion that we had with a lot of input.
Yeah.
I know it's not addressing exactly what you're saying, because you'd want to possibly see what we could do to mandate it. I'm thinking the market and the conditions are somewhat favorable in the direction that we'd like to see it go, but.
I understand, Mr. Mayor, and I guess, you know, my concern is as we looked at that, and there was a multifamily unit there, but most of those single-family residences, if I remember correctly, they were going to be hitting the market somewhere around 250 or above,
Yeah.
And that does not qualify as affordable housing for our community.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hitting more of that workforce housing that we have a concern about too, but you're absolutely right. It isn't affordable, but it's filling a niche that we really have a need in this community right now. So good dialogue. I don't know where and what. Mark's raised his hand.
Well, if I can just follow up on the counselor's comment, I think Counselor Dravkin hit the nail on the head. The way the pilot program was put together in terms of how the pieces I like about it is not only the mandate, but the interspersing of the different housing products rather than segregating housing products. It creates a multi-generational neighborhood, it creates a mixed income neighborhood, and it just has more sustained value in that regard. we're going to, after the Baker Creek discussion, the Planning Commission and planning staff have been meeting, and we're going to launch a great neighborhoods principle discussion with the community and really to have it ask the question, what makes a great neighborhood in McMinnville, and then ensure that we can write a zoning ordinance that has minimum-based standards to achieve that. So one of those dialogues could be looking at mixed products. It's hard to mandate the subsidized housing piece of it because we don't have the enabling legislation at the state to do that yet. The inclusionary zoning discussion only went so far. And I think they only went so far because they wanted to test this process in terms of this pilot program for non-multifamily complexes in terms of that mandate. So, but there are opportunities to have creative discussions.
Good. And I think we have a committee set up that's doing that, and along with the Planning Commission and your direction, so.
Yeah, we'll be getting something out to the community, asking for people who want to participate on that as a citizen advisory committee in the next 2 weeks, so.
Good. Mark, do you still have a comment? If you'd come up and you can share the table with Heather.
Mark Davis, 652 Southeast Washington Street. Quite frankly, I'm shocked by this map. I'm really, this is nothing. Nothing I've seen here has shocked me as much as this map. But I would like to remind you that there's two sources of land for development. One is new land, which seems to me like it's going to be a bit of a problem, at least in the short term. The other is infill. And the city also has a tool that it's started using, which is your urban renewal district. And I would encourage you strongly to look at that in the area that especially the northeast corridor area there. I think there's some potential for some infill. The city has some cash that's coming in through urban renewal to designate some of that for affordable housing, and I think we might get a project or two. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Insightful. Any other discussion? Thank you, Heather, and again, share with the team how much we appreciate. You guys have been putting in some long hours and some late nights to hit some of these hurdles that we needed to do, but we feel your passion. We know that you guys are working really hard, and we appreciate it. So take it back to staff.
Yeah, I'll definitely do that. They've been a huge effort on this.
Yeah. So. Thank you. That takes us out of our presentations this evening and takes us to our consent agenda. Our consent agenda this evening considers the minutes of our May 9th, 2017 and June 27th, 2017 dinner and regular meetings. Is there any counselor that would request to have any item taken off of our consent agenda? Hearing none, I will ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilor Stassen and approved by, and seconded by Councilor Drabkin. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. This motion has been approved unanimously. That takes us to our resolution this evening. And so our resolution is number 2017-52, a resolution amending the McMinnville Affordable Housing Task Force Annual Action Plan. And so, Heather, I'll call on you again to make our presentation as we discuss these items at the council level.
Yeah, so Mayor, I'll set this up and.
Mayor, is there going to be opportunity for the public to speak
On
the affordable housing issue?
John, if you'd like to, why don't you come up if we've passed that? So come up and share some thoughts if you had something prepared. I'm sorry, I get moving pretty fast here as we're going through some things, but I know you might have some comments.
Yeah, you work right along. I'm John Engelbrecht. I live at 1266 Northwest Augusta Drive here in McMinnville. I've looked over this House Bill 4079, and what I see is nothing more than a busting of the urban growth boundary. It tells you right off the bat to ignore the requirements of the urban growth boundary. Forget you got a 20-year supply of land in there, and you have to put it contiguous to the urban growth boundary. It don't say inside or outside. This is terrible. I would support this bill for affordable housing if it's in the urban growth boundary. If it's important enough to build and to go through all this, it could be built in the urban growth boundary. It should be. Now, McMinnville has had a little experiment on affordable housing. A few years ago, the two of you members up there on the city council remember that they wanted to put lower cost housing along Baker Creek Road, and the city chambers were filled with developers and builders adamantly opposed to it. Okay, they converted the ordinance to higher cost homes. Within 4 hours, every lot was sold. Go look at Compton Crest and you'll see what the affordable housing looks like. Now, affordable housing has to come. People can no longer afford higher scale homes. And if it's that important, it can be built in the urban growth boundary. Now, you take House Bill 4079, you couple that with Senate Bill 1573, look what's being done to you. You're being told how to run the city. And this comes from the same group that gave us the 20-year supply of land in the urban growth boundary, that 28 years ago tried to take away our rights to vote on annexation, succeeded with Senate Bill 1573, and that's where you're being treated like you shouldn't be treated. I almost used the word puppets, but for the state for that group to go and control us through the state, they're controlling all the cities the same way. You might as well throw the urban growth boundary out for what these two bills give you. But again, if affordable housing is important, and it's that important, you can build it in the urban growth boundary. You don't need to specifically have it outside. Thank you.
Thank you, John, for your comments. Okay, that now takes us to the resolution, and so Heather, if you would run us through the resolution 2017-52.
Yeah, so Mayor, I'll set this up, and then I think what I'll do is then send it to Councilor Drapkin, who is the chairperson of the McMinnville Affordable Housing Task Force. But this comes to you as a recommendation from the Affordable Housing Task Force. Part of their charge with their enabling resolution was to look at their action plan, which is a 3-year action plan, evaluate it every year, and see if there are amendments to be made to City Council in terms of recommendations. When the Affordable Housing Task Force gave their presentation in June, they did come back with some amendments for you to consider. We shared them with you at the time, and then you gave us the direction to come back with a resolution that authorizes those. Just to describe those amendments, it's to sort of broaden our program a little bit further and be more creative about how we're approaching this to find those different golden nuggets that will help McMinnville with its affordable housing issues. One was in the midterm, there was a discussion of surveying the city for vacant city-owned lots and then review them for a particular program. our recommendation to you is to survey the city for property opportunities, so not just city-owned lots. Look at city-owned lots, county-owned lots, nonprofit-owned lots, and then research and evaluate those for many different creative programs in terms of how to leverage those properties for affordable housing. And then under the long-term year, which is the year of 2018 to 2019, we're recommending a revision in terms of priority. Just as we just had the previous discussion, we need to really get our hands on what the buildable land inventory is in the city and understand where there are opportunities to develop and whether that development would be considered affordable housing or higher end housing. And then look at take that and put that into a housing needs analysis so we can understand exactly where the need is as well, and then go from there to building a program. So that's looking at a revised priority for that action.
Thank you. I'm going to take just a quick opportunity to, again, note the really incredibly hard, efficient, and thorough and well-done work of our planning department, who is keeping us on pace and moving through a number of action items here that were merely thoughts 2 years ago. So I really applaud that. With looking at the action plan and the amendments, 1 through 4, the short term, those are complete. So the revisions are in the midterm and long term. And while I'd leave the long term as written, I would like to also revise the priorities of the midterm actions, and this came up fairly recently, so I didn't have time to get it into the packet, but much as you see those long-term actions reprioritized on our midterm actions, well, one, the number 4 can come off, which is related to House Bill 4079, leaving us with 3 midterm actions, and I would suggest that number 1 would be what is currently number 3, which is to review our emergency shelter zoning ordinance provisions and revise as necessary to provide allowance for tiny homes or temporary shelter to residents suffering from homelessness. Number 2 would stay what is currently number 2, which is the survey of the city-owned properties and other properties, county, nonprofit-owned, etc., to research and create programs to leverage those properties for affordable housing. And then number 3 would become what is currently number 1, which is to evaluate the impact of a density bonus for developers, including affordable housing units. The reason I'd like to move that to the 3rd slot is, as we've been hearing, we have reduced opportunities for developers at this time. So with that in mind, it seems to make little sense to have that as our first action item. The other 2 really go hand in hand, and so it's in some ways it's a matter of which is the appropriate one to come first, and I think given all the circumstances, putting the review of emergency shelter zoning ordinance as number 1 seems to be the most logical in my mind. That's my suggestion.
Any discussion among the council?
I think that we accept this as modified by.
A second.
Did any other discussion before we take the motion? Okay. So we have a motion to approve resolution 2017-52 as amended. Discussion. Hearing none, do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Council President Mankey and a second by Councilor Cassie. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition signify by saying no. This resolution passes unanimously in favor. us this evening. That takes us this evening into some ordinances that we have. The first reading with possible second reading of ordinance 5030, an ordinance authorizing lease of real property located at the McMinnville Airport to Redtail Soaring LLC pursuant to ORS 271-310. And so I'll call on Mike for a report, a staff report.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I'd refer you to the staff report that's in your packet from Engineering Service Manager Rich Spofford. Also included is the proposed lease language with exhibits, as well as the draft minutes from the June 29th Airport Commission meeting. The lease before you this evening is a lease with Redtail Soaring to lease 8.7 acres of airport property for glider operations. They first entered into a 5-year lease in 2011 for those operations. That lease expired in September of 2016. They've asked for another lease for a 5-year period with one 5-year extension allowed. As part of the renegotiating the lease, we did take the occasion to bring the lease rate equivalent to the proposed farm lease that's later on your agenda this evening, and that's at $175 per acre per year. It's likely that if this area that they use for glider operations, if it weren't used for glider operations, it would be farmed and it would be part of the farm lease, so it's really an equivalent lease amount. As noted, the Airport Commission considered this lease at their June 29th meeting and unanimously recommended that the City Council approve the proposed lease. And with that, I'd answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Any discussion? We had an opportunity to talk briefly at our dinner meeting on that. Hearing no discussion,
I have a question, sorry.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I recall that the Redtail Soaring operation has caused a lot of complaints amongst McMinnville citizens. I was wondering if you could, if that come up at all in the lease conversation, if that relationship with the neighbors is improved. Can you talk to that a little bit?
So 2 things. As part of the update to the lease language that's in your packet, we did add in section 2 of the lease that the lessee conform with the commercial minimum standards that are in place with Title 11 of the Municipal Code related to airport activity, as well as the recommendations that are in our Fly Friendly program, which identify those noise-sensitive areas that are most impacted by airport operations. The other part, we did have one person testify at the Airport Commission meeting that they were concerned about the glider lease, and they wondered if glider operations would be increasing, and if they noted that the tow plane that the glider operator uses is quite noisy. You'll find in the minutes that the employee of the Redtail Soaring that runs the tow plane on occasion noted that they have made changes to the plane, both to the propeller and to the operating RPMs that they're using, that they believe have made the plane quieter. They did agree to try to conform to the Fly Friendly measures, and the chair of the Airport Commission noted to the neighbor that if there were issues, they just needed to maintain the communication with the airport manager, and Redtail Soaring agreed to try to work to minimize conflicts. And so I'm not aware of recent complaints related to glider operations. Those Holly and Ingo, our airport managers, have reported pretty consistently at the Airport Commission the complaints we are getting, and I don't recall that we've had complaints regarding the glider operations recently.
Any other discussion? Does any counselor object to having the ordinance read by title only? So will the city attorney please read the ordinance by title only?
This is a first reading of ordinance number 5030, an ordinance authorizing lease of real property located at the McMinnville Airport to Redtail Soaring LLC pursuant to ORS 271.310.
And again, I will ask for any council discussion or council or staff input at this point. Hearing none, we will now ask for a motion to pass ordinance 5027 to a second reading. Okay,
Second.
it has been moved and seconded.
Voice vote on this one?
Right down here? No, right up here.
We'll call for a voice vote.
Okay, we'll call for a voice vote. Melissa?
All in favor, say aye. We don't need to poll on this one.
Okay, so we'll just, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. We have new, we have a little
We
new
do.
dialogue
Yep.
here. And we're going through. So, ordinance 5030 passes on its first reading unanimously. I will now ask the city attorney to read the ordinance again, only by title only.
This is ordinance number 5030, an ordinance authorizing lease of real property located at the McMinnville Airport to Red Tail Soaring LLC pursuant to ORS 271.310.
I will now ask for the motion to adopt ordinance number 5030. I will now ask the city recorder to poll the council.
So we need a motion and a second for this
Okay.
one.
A motion and a second.
I move. I second.
Okay, we have a motion by Council President Mackey and a second by Councilor Stassens. I will now ask the city recorder to poll the council.
Aye.
Councilor Drupkin. Councilor Garvin.
Aye.
Councilor Jeffries.
Aye.
Councilor Rudin.
Aye.
Councilor Stassens.
Aye.
Councilor Minke.
It passed unanimously. Thank you. We are now going to have the first reading with a possible second reading of ordinance 5031, an ordinance authorizing lease of real property located at the McMinnville Airport to Potcakes Farms LLC pursuant to ORS 271.310. We will call on Planning Director Heather Richards to give us a staff report. Mike Bissett.
I've been working on that.
It finally worked. Yes.
Could we have a motion to approve that? Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I'll refer you to the staff report that's in your packet, as well as proposed lease exhibits, hangar renderings, which I believe were emailed to you separately from the packet, as well as the draft minutes from the June 29th Airport Commission meeting. The action you have before you this evening is a consideration of a lease with Potcake Farms LLC for a lease of 15,150 square feet of airport property to construct 2 aircraft hangars. The location of the proposed hangars is consistent with the city's adopted airport layout plan. The initial term for the lease, as proposed, is 35 years, which ends in July of 2052. Subsequent to that 35-year period, there is a difference in this lease than the leases you've seen in the past. Rather than the lease reverting and the building itself reverting back to the city, this lease does allow for 5-year extensions as long as, after an inspection and assessment of the building, there is at least 5 years of usable life in the building left. That renewal period can continue until such time as the inspection and assessment reveals that there's less than 5 years of usable life left in the building. At that time, we would enter into a final renewal period that would dictate that the removal of the building occurs at the end of its useful life and the land reverts back to the city for release opportunities. You'll hear, I believe you'll hear testimony this evening that that is a different approach to leases than you've seen in the past. Historically, your leases have been for a fixed term, and at the end of that fixed term, the building and the property reverts to the city, at which time we're responsible for maintenance. We've heard significant comment over the last several years that our lease terms are pretty restrictive. It's quite difficult for people to obtain financing under our current lease terms. And there's much concern about what's going to happen to people that have existing hangars at the airport when their lease ends. Basically, they feel they've invested in the property, and as they get to the end of their lease, they have very few options for reselling because in a short period of time, their lease is going to revert, the building is going to convert to be a city-owned building. So we've worked very hard to try to find options for leases that make it more attractive for development at the airport. We've worked very carefully to make sure that the airport is protected and also that we're allowing the continued growth at the airport, which is the vision, I believe, not only of the airport community but also of the city. It's consistent with our airport layout plan. So what you have before you this evening is an example that we borrowed from Roseburg's Municipal Airport. They have a very similar approach where they have an initial lease term and then they allow for extensions until the building is no longer usable and then the building is removed. And then that property is then available for releasing. That's acceptable for the, to the FAA and allows us to meet our grant assurances, and it is been generally positively received by proposed developers at the airport as well as existing users. There was much testimony at the Airport Commission meeting regarding how we're going to treat existing hangar owners at the airport. Staff's testimony at the commission meeting would be that we'd recommend to the City Council that you entertain renegotiating current leases with current leaseholders to offer similar end of lease term extensions. Really, I think the value there is the city doesn't end up with a building that's approaching the end of its life that we have to do maintenance on, that at some point we have to remove. I think you'll hear testimony that under the current leases, there's very little incentive for the hangar owners to, as they're reaching the end of their lease, to continue to do maintenance on the building, particularly given the fact that they're going to have to turn it over to the city and that there's very little resale value for them. So I think staff would be in support of revisiting the existing leases with leaseholders. The Airport Commission was in support of that, and they recommended that you consider that as you consider the lease with Potcake Farms LLC. And with that, unless there are any questions, I would suggest you might have testimony this evening on this particular lease. I know the proposed lessee is here this evening, and there are some interested airport users that may want to make comment on the particular approach that we have in front of you this evening.
Thank you, Mike. Before we go any further, does any counselor have objects to having this ordinance read by title only? If the city attorney would please read the ordinance by title only.
This is ordinance number 5031, an ordinance authorizing lease of real property located at the McMinnville Municipal Airport to Potcake Farms LLC pursuant to ORS 271.310.
Thank you, Dave. Discussion among the council at this point. Adam?
So I attended the Airport Commission meeting as a member of the audience, and then on the 30th, spent the afternoon out at the airport to get better context of what was going on out there. I spent an hour with Graham, 45 minutes with Ingo, and then an hour and a half with an airport user that's in the audience, Alan. And from what I learned out there was our city-owned hangars are in the worst shape of all the hangars out there. And so what that told me is, as a precedent, we're not our current lease platform isn't a very good structure of us being landlords as far as buildings and tenants go. And I think that this current lease that's in front of us allows us to have future growth out at the airport. Just as a business owner looking for land to put up a shop, I've ran across landowners on 99W that don't want to sell land, but they'll give me a 30-year lease, and it's pretty hard to get a business loan with that. So I do sympathize with the airport users that are up against the same issue. There's a lot of things out there that could use improvement besides our city-owned hangars that are very close to the end of their life, especially the 3 wooden frame structures. The taxiways definitely could use some repair. Mike and I talked about that briefly. and what money requirement that is for the city. And I just feel that if this current platform that's in front of us is the way I personally would like to move forward, and I would like us as a city to, come up with a one-time offer for all existing leaseholders. I do realize, from my understanding, that those current leaseholders are at a little bit cheaper rate, not much, but it is cheaper, and I think if they're wanting to play ball with the new lease, they should be brought up to the new lease rate with the same CPI annual increase. And I just see that allowing more growth, which allows more planes to be stored there, which flows more fuel, so that's better for the city to generate more revenue, makes the airport more self-sustaining. I realize that might raise complaints with homeowners around there, but that airport's been there as long as I can remember, and I would guess that the majority of homeowners in that UGB bought their house long after that airport was there. Not that I don't sympathize with some of the noise that they incur, but if you buy a house next to an airport, you should probably expect to hear a little bit of wind chop. And that's my discussion for now.
Thank you, Adam. Any other discussion from the council? Hearing none.
I'll
Go
say
ahead.
I'm in support of it as well. I think it's a smart move. I think it's good for the city and that we don't have to take back properties that we need to maintain. And it also gives the owners of the property or the leasees the opportunity to have a longer stay there and take ownership of their own property and maintain it. So I think it's a better structure than what we have up there now. So I'd like to revisit the other leases if the leasees are interested.
Yes, I've got to concur, and I think it's wonderful that Mike and his staff have proposed just that. I'm sure with everything else you've got going, it's just one more thing, but we appreciate the enthusiasm with which you're approaching it.
And the creativity.
So I guess what I'll do initially is on revisiting the current leases, do we want to give a direction to staff to come back and present? Yes. Alan, you had an opportunity to address this in the opening statement. Any more that you would like to say here? I think we're going in a direction that you feel comfortable, but give you an opportunity to share any other thoughts you might have.
Gee, I think Adam and Mike presented it very well, except for one thing. Remember, as our taxes go up, our hangar value goes down. It makes no sense. At the year or 2 years left, our hangar's worth nothing. Nobody will buy it because the taxes are way up, but in the 2 years, it, reverts back to the city.
Any thoughts on?
Just to clarify, Alan, you're saying if your lease was to not be extended, but if it was to be extended, that would be a moot point?
Say that again?
What you just brought up was if you lived out your current lease and it wasn't offered to be extended, but if we were to offer it to be extended, much like the Potcake Farms LLC lease, your concern with taxes and the end of your term would be a moot point.
Well, I'll just keep on paying taxes. And that tax money, if you could, the county told me that our tax money goes to the schools. As you know, the schools they don't need any more money. That money should go back to the airport, which will pay for all you pay for insurance.
I don't know that we have control of where taxes go. Yeah, I don't know that we at the city have control of where our taxes go.
I don't either. I don't know anything about that, but other than the fact that money spent at the airport should stay at the airport.
I think that's beyond the scope of discussion tonight anyway.
Thank you, Alan. Any other comments from anyone in the audience on this ordinance that we're talking about? Go ahead.
Okay. I'll be short. And John Lautenbach, I live at 1796 Troon Court. I'm an airport commissioner. I'm also a board member of the Yamhill County Gospel Rescue Mission. Anyway, and that's a point that Alan made, that I talked to the assessor, and they said, well, we just measure what your hangar is worth. Well, it isn't worth that anymore. The real market value becomes null. In fact, the 5 years before the end of the lease, why do I pay property taxes at that point? What are they going to take? My hangar?
Well, if you have to have the annual or the every 5-year evaluation, you can take it and
Well,
say, hey, it isn't worth anything.
I'll take the 5-year evaluation, like
Part of the contract.
Potcake will get. Yeah, that'll be fine.
Yeah, and
And
that's what we're going to be talking about.
Great.
Bringing that to the plate for
Fine.
you guys, okay?
That's all I wanted. Thank you.
John? Graham?
My name's Graham Goad. I live on Border Lane in McMinnville. I have a business out at the airport. I have a couple of hangars out at the airport. My airplanes are out at the airport. Pretty much everything I own, aside from my house and my car, sit on leased property at the airport. I'd like to commend the staff and the airport managers for putting this lease together and coming up with these terms. I would recommend to all the councilors to approve this lease. And I will be talking to my hangar partner with B&G Hangar, which is the hangar that houses my business. And I will be discussing this lease with the board of the condominium association that I'm a president of that has 20 T hangars. And we will be requesting lease terms similar to this and offering to pay the same lease rate that is starting with the Potcake Farms. So, thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Good to see you. Go ahead, Holly.
Hello, my name is Holly Niels with Connect Aviation, also part airport manager. We worked with Mike Bissett with the city staff for putting together these lease packages, and we're really excited about the opportunity that they present. And I think Adam touched on this in his comments of the opportunity for generating revenue, much needed revenue for maintaining the airport facilities. This is a big opportunity. There's people waiting for this investment opportunity at the airport, and I think this will open some doors for us and help us spruce up the facilities and attract more businesses. And by bringing these other leases up to the same level as Potcakes and revisiting those lease rates, we're going to have more revenue to help fix up the facilities that are a little bit dilapidated and increase our image there, which I think benefits the city of McMinnville with all the business that we're bringing in. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to encourage you that this is a good solution for the problems that we face out of the airport.
Thank you.
Scott?
Go ahead.
Well, you may be going to say, just from what we understand from Mike, you provided a great deal of information and assistance with this whole project, and we want to thank you for all of your efforts very much.
The communication and the working, we know you've put a lot of time and effort into this, both you and Ingo, so thank you. Okay, I'm going to step outside of this again, or Remy, do you have? Nope.
I was just going to say that it's so helpful with this also hearing that this is coming with the support of the Airport Commission.
Yeah.
I know, John, you and I have communicated before about the council hearing recommendations from the Airport Commission, and so I just appreciate that recommendation coming along with this. It makes our job a lot easier.
Thank you. So I'm going to step outside of the ordinance just for a moment, and it's pretty clear to me that there's a unanimous direction to send back to staff to come back and revisit the current leases and bring back the best way to do that to us, Mike, and then we'll move forward on that discussion at a later time. But thank you for your input, those in the audience. I think at this point now I will ask for a motion to pass ordinance number 4031 to a second reading, or 5031.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilor Drabkin and seconded by Councillor Stossens. So we will call for a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Ordinance number 5031 passes on its first reading unanimously, and I now will ask the city attorney to read the ordinance once again by title only.
This is the second reading of ordinance number 5031, an ordinance authorizing the lease of real property located at the McMinnville Municipal Airport to Potcake Farms LLC pursuant to ORS 271.310.
I will now ask for a motion to adopt ordinance number 5031. I will now ask the city recorder to poll the council. Oh, excuse me. I need a motion and a
So
second.
moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Councillor Jeffries and seconded by
Adam.
Councillor,
Oh, Dropkin.
okay,
Stop.
Garvin.
Garvin.
I'm trying to be quiet over here, and
I will then ask the city recorder to poll the council.
Aye. Counselor Drapkin, Counselor Garvin,
Aye.
Counselor Jeffries,
Aye.
Counselor Rudin, Counselor Rudin,
Aye.
Counselor Stassens,
Aye.
Council President Minke.
Aye.
Ordinance number 5031 is adopted by a unanimous vote, so thank you with that. I'm going to have a third opportunity to do this, maybe right, okay? It may take one or two meetings to get this down. First reading with possible second reading of ordinance 5032, an ordinance authorizing lease of real property located at the McMinnville Airport to Family Farms LLC pursuant to ORS 271-310. Mike, staff report?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Once again, in your packet, you have a staff report from Engineering Manager Rich Spofford. Included with that report are the proposed lease, the lease exhibits, and once again, the draft minutes from the June 29th meeting. What you have before you this evening is a proposed lease with Cower Family Farms LLC for farming of 333.9 acres of airport property. Over the past several years, many of the parcels that are included in this proposal have not been farmed, and because of that, we've been using maintenance funds to keep those areas mowed and weed-free. Several of the parcels have been farmed, and the lease rates for those parcels have varied between $20 per acre per year and $56 per acre per year. In March of 17, we issued a request for proposals from farmers regarding the lease of these areas. We received 3 proposals. The proposals were reviewed by staff as well as Airport Manager Holly Nels. Upon completion of the review process, it was determined that the proposal from Cower Family Farms was in the best interest of the airport. Their proposed initial lease rate is $175 per acre per year, and that increases 3% per year over the subsequent years of the lease, for a total compensation of approximately $310,000 over the initial 5-year lease period. Also included in their proposal are mowing services for large grass areas that can't be farmed, and weed spraying services along taxiway and runway shoulders, old taxiway areas, and overrun shoulder areas. We'll use those services if needed. Over the past few years, we've spent about $20,000 annually on those mowing and weed spraying services. So, the lease was considered by the Airport Commission at their June 29th meeting, and they unanimously recommended that the council approve the proposed lease with Cower Family Farms. So unless there are any questions, staff would propose that the ordinance be adopted as presented.
Thank you, Mike, for that report. We now will consider the matter of ordinance number 5032. Does any councilor object to having the ordinance read by title only? Hearing none, will the city attorney please read the ordinance by title only?
This is a first reading of ordinance number 5032, an ordinance authorizing lease of real property located at the McMinnville Airport to Cower Family Farms LLC pursuant to ORS 271.310.
Now is an opportunity for us to have discussion. Any discussion on this ordinance?
I have a question. In regards to the weed spraying, how is that taken into consideration or addressed in regards to the endangered species that we have living at the airport?
That same question came up from the Airport Commission. I guess I didn't identify the answer in the minutes very well. Safety operations are excluded from those endangered species protections. In fact, they're considered a take, but it's an approved take for us to keep those areas mowed and weed-free because it's essential for the safe operations of the airport.
So, how does that prioritization then work in terms of if mowing would serve as weed abatement or spraying as two different methods, but one could impact the species and one couldn't? Is it left to the person caring for the land to make the determination?
And actually, the safety operations, it's a combination of mowing and spraying. Often the spraying is the runway itself where the cracks and the overruns areas are sprayed. And then the gravel areas where the lighting and such are sprayed. Holly and Ingo are here. They could maybe get into more detail of where the areas are sprayed and which are mowed, but there isn't a distinction necessarily made in the exemption that we're given. We're required to keep those areas safe for airport operations, and therefore that considered take is an approved operation at the airport. So.
Okay. Thank you.
So just to provide comment, again, Holly Niels, airport manager. The spraying primarily happens in the gravel areas adjacent to the runways and taxiways, which is predominantly where the endangered species nest. The spraying activities happen twice a year, and I'm not sure how well we've scheduled that, and it's something that perhaps we could look for in the future. With the timing, it happens early spring and then late fall, which is typically outside of the nesting season for the endangered species. Sometimes the weeds get a little out of control and we have to mow them, but there's a very localized spot where the birds are nesting, and they typically stay out of the grassy areas. So the impact for the endangered species is not what you would anticipate given the dangerous nature of those safety activities that we do for maintenance of the runways and taxiways. So I think that it's not as bad as one might think. So.
Adam, did you have some comments?
I just want to thank Mike and his staff for putting that RFP out. When I read through Airport Commission minutes years ago when I applied to be an airport commissioner, I was very surprised at the lease rate per acre. And it's nice that we're going to be generating about $45,000 in additional revenue and eliminating about $20,000 in expenses. So on the path to sustainability, I commend you on that.
Thank you, Adam. Any other discussion? Hearing none, thank you, Holly. I will call for I will now ask for a motion to pass resolution number 5032 to a second reading.
So moved.
So moved by Councilor Garvin, and a second.
Second.
And Council President Menke. And we'll go for a voice vote at this point. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed by a nay? Okay. Ordinance number 5032 passes on the first reading. And so I will now ask the city attorney to read the ordinance again by title only.
This is the second reading of ordinance number 5032, an ordinance authorizing lease of real property located at the McMinnville Airport to Cower Family Farms, LLC, pursuant to ORS 271.310.
I will now ask for a motion to adopt ordinance number 5032.
So moved.
Okay?
Second.
It's been moved by Councilor Garvin and seconded by Councilor Rudin. I will ask the city recorder to poll the council.
Counselor Drapkin.
Aye.
Counselor Garvin.
Aye.
Counselor Jeffries.
Aye.
Counselor Rudin.
Aye.
Counselor Stassens.
Aye.
Council President Minke.
Aye.
Ordinance number 5032 passes unanimously. Thank you for bearing with me through this new process. That takes us to advice and information, and so I will call on council to report any activities on committees or councils that you participate with, and I'll start with Adam, and we can move down.
So YCOM normally meets this following Thursday, but I got an email today that the CAD update for our new software platform is not quite ready, so hopefully we'll go over that next month, and we're not going to have a meeting this week.
Thank you. Kevin?
McMinnville Community Media meets on Monday at 5:30, so I'll be there. And had a meeting with the new executive director of the COG last week, Sean O'Day, and he's going to be visiting. I think he met with you already, Jeff, did he?
Not yet, we've talked on the phone.
So he's kind of doing a listening tour of all the cities and counties as part of the council governments, and really wants to get an idea of what's going on in those cities and how the COG could be better support. So I said it's kind of a challenge in McMinnville because we have such great staff and we're pretty self-sufficient, but he's going to try to find a way to increase his relevancy to us. If you have any ideas, let me know.
Yeah. Thank you, Kevin. Kelly?
Let's see. The Visit McMinnville, I believe, is next week, and I'm sure affordable housing's coming up too. And I know Parkway is, I think, next week also. So I'm looking forward to being at those meetings.
Thank you. Alan?
Historical Landmarks is coming up fourth Wednesday. That's coming up this month. And then also affordable housing. Airport Commission is in the distance a little bit. So that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Remy?
The Affordable Housing Homeless Subcommittee has been exploring partnerships with the county to bring programs to McMinnville that have proven track records in other communities. So that's exciting and in a very infant stage, but exciting possibilities. And then Piecing Community Together, which for the folks that aren't here any longer, but we're asking what they could do to get involved in solving homelessness in McMinnville. A good first step would be to attend Piecing Community Together, which is an event that's put on by the Housing Authority that brings members of our homeless community and members of our housed community, along with service providers, all together for education and discussion. And it's a monthly meeting. The next one is July 13th, so in 2 days. It's from 5 to 7 p.m., and it'll happen at the McMinnville Cooperative Ministries, if anybody cares to attend.
Thank you, Remy. Wendy?
We typically have our urban renewal meetings on the first Wednesday of the month, and that fell on a holiday, so we did not have it this month. So I don't have anything to report.
Good. Thank you. Two things that I have with the Parkway Committee. My understanding is that the transportation plan was approved, and the bypass received $22 million, along with the 10.9 million that we saved from the first part, brings us close to 30 million. We need 90 million, so we are very grateful that we were in the mix there, but moving forward, it's going to be some just to do right away and design. And that's what this money was for, Kevin, was right away in design, to be able to get a shovel ready that would allow us to participate in the federal dollars. At our last meeting, we did have an opportunity to talk to representatives from the U.S. Department of Transportation, asking about what shovel-ready really means. And they say that the definitions that have changed from one administration to the other have not hit them yet, and they couldn't answer our questions. So again, the Parkway is going to be still focused and diligently moving forward as we have done to look at Phase 2. Again, we're looking at the soft opening of the bypass sometime in September, probably around the 15th, with the true opening of the bypass middle of December, probably around the 15th of December. Also, yesterday when we were having the subcommittee on the homeless, a potential opportunity came up, and I just, not that we're headed down that direction for sure, but it was a discussion item I thought I might bring up, is that the county has approached the group with a piece of property that is adjacent to the Yamhill County Gospel Mission, and it is in foreclosure. They're looking at taking that property, and that could be a potential site for a youth outreach project in a piece of property. A lot of things have to come together. We can get the property at a penny, and but then we're going to have to fix the building up and have an agency that would take this on. But another service, I think, that can be delivered in McMinnville that is long time over is needed. So I thought I'd just bring that to your attention. Let's go around to department heads. Matt, Susan, again, welcome. It's good to have you here this evening. I'm looking out. Scott, anything from you?
Good deal.
Marcia? You know, they sit back there and they think they are just enjoying themselves. Heather? Mike? Melissa? David? Jeff?
A couple of quick things. The family and I and some out-of-town guests got to enjoy our first turkey rama, and I found out it's important to not make eye contact with Zach Geary. So I was invited to help judge the beard and mustache competition, during which point I met his father, and I haven't told you a small world story lately. It turns out that Mike was born and raised in the little town in Indiana, right next to the little town in Indiana where Doris was raised and went to high school and lived there through college. So another 1 degree of separation from Jeff and Doris. I'll be out of town the rest of the week attending the Oregon City County Managers Association conference over in Bend. The first session that I expect to attend about 10:30 tomorrow morning is a panel discussion on innovative approaches to homelessness, focused primarily on small cities.
Thank you, Jeff.
This is interesting.
A part of your packet tonight is the cash and investment report for your information. Anything else that needs to be brought up? Hearing none, we will go ahead and close this session, and then we will move into a executive session under ORS 192.6602D to conduct deliberations with persons designated to carry out labor negotiations. And so we'll go ahead and close our meeting. Thank you, everyone.
So we're doing wings, and I mean, it's crazy, and I'm falling off all over the place, but it was the first time since they were able to get out that I was hungry, and that I was excited, and I felt life in me. So then, when he moved back in, it was okay, so I'm really taking relationship, and then that was kind of we commitment to each other that is that I emptied out our personal savings account and bought boards and people out of what we do when we get over there. We haven't been over there in the summer for a long time because David's parents use the house in the summer. So we only get it in the winter and then all spring. Oh, well, that hanging out was honestly when we decided to move away from Oaks. That was originally, we were like, oh, we're not going to do anything. And then just like, Silent Rock, and of course, the river, and go for a while. Good. And we had done a couple of things over there. We were there for conferences and stuff. But then we never did. My daughter. Yeah, well, so they do, Dylan did, they did I don't think they're doing it this summer, they did a summer camp last year. It was really cool, it was like a survival road sport, so like they would go and build a shelter and stuff like that, and it was really neat, we enjoyed that a lot. I did not enjoy the 40-minute drive back and forth every day. For cycles, but so I had only been to like the boat launch out there, and we were like, oh, this is gonna
Urban Renewal Agency meeting of July 11th, 2017. I'll go ahead and call us to order. On our agenda tonight, first we have consent agenda. Get ready for this. Considering the minutes of October 13th, 2015, June 14th, 2016, June 28th, 2016, August 9th, 2016, April 11th, 2017, June 13th, 2017, and June 27th, 2017 of the Urban Renewal Agency meetings. I'm going to ask if anyone would like to take anything off of that agenda. Okay, hearing none, I would ask for a motion to approve.
I so move.
Okay. It has been moved by Council President Menke and seconded by Councilor Rudin. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the consent agenda passes unanimously in favor. We now are moving into an executive session under ORS 192-6602E to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions. So we'll move into closed quarters again.
neighbors who were there had another son. They both grown, the son was grown, but that was it in 5 years. Yeah. And we knew who they were. I mean, we talked to them all the time, but those were the only two. Yeah. And that's so this is very different. Yeah. Run around and bicycle and occasionally he was never, it was never on purpose. He was, but I mean, it was on purpose, but like he wasn't doing it. Like he'd move, like we'd have to take signs for cycle Oregon and stuff, and he'd go and reposition them in different areas throughout the night. That's like that was not busy. And it was like it was funny more than it was sad. He was schizophrenic, and that's how he was medicated. Yeah. Right. But that was it. This is worse than we really thought. A lot of it. Weird. Okay, there's a really cute house for sale in Albany. But Albany is Albany. We went and met with the banker today and had a home loan. I'm like, it's so depressing. Everything is in our price range of like 4 things, and you're like, I'm like, that's rough. Makes you want to go back.